I'd like to acknowledge where we meet today, on the land of the Dharawal people, whose totem is the lyrebird. Lyrebirds are builders. I'm not sure if all of you know that. I haven't actually seen a lyrebird in active building mode, but the males build large display mounds for their fabulous tail feathers, and the females build equally large, water-resistant, predator-proof nests. So it seems only right that we meet here today to talk about building, as do lyrebirds, both to attract and to sustain. So thank you everyone for coming here. I think this is a great forum to get the discussion going on how we work together to, I guess, not just build things, but try to build things in a coordinated way. And that's a lot of what we try to do. We're a company that was set up to take on some of the challenge of the energy transition. And I guess how we see it is that there's a lot of existing energy infrastructure. Coal plants are being shut down over time. And if we're going to do the energy transition well, a lot of that is about integrating with existing infrastructure well, and that's a bit of a theme through today. So Southwest and Greater Western Sydney are transforming quickly, and this will only gain pace over the next few decades. These regions where we are today, have historically come a distant second to the rest of Sydney for its infrastructure needs. That's a theme of George's talk today. Going back to, I was talking to George earlier. His PhD was on urban planning, starting in Sydney in the time of Arthur Phillip's settlement, and that was a tale of two cities then. And I think he's traced that through over the last 200 years. And it remains a tale of two cities today. Now, the Greater West is rapidly expanding now. I think if we take Greater Western Sydney as a city, it's the city in Australia with the fastest population growth. So it's rapidly expanding, and the region needs lots, amongst other things, lots of renewable energy. And even more so in 20 years' time, when 2/3 of the increased population in the state will be located in Greater Western Sydney. Now, Endeavour Energy, who's here today, is counting on at least 50% of Sydney's population being based in the Greater West by 2036, and have a very long list of committed infrastructure projects that have been planned and committed to meet the increased demand for electricity in this area. So this is these areas are our priority growth areas in the state plan, through to Sydney priority growth area, Western Sydney, Aerotropolis, Greater Macarthur growth area. These will all see massive growth in housing, as well as new business and industry, such as one of the big topics in the energy industry now is the arrival of energy-intensive data centres. So New South Wales has an old fleet of coal generation. Some of you may know Vales Point, which is our oldest generator. It's by Lake Macquarie. It was commissioned in 1978, the year after I was born. Now, its design life, it wasn't meant to be around today. I'm not sure what my design life is, but certainly Vales Point was not designed to last 50 years. So we've got a challenge of ageing infrastructure in the New South Wales grid generally. And I think it's fair to say that New South Wales has been slow off the mark in coming up with a plan on how to meet the future energy needs. The state is only just ahead of Queensland as the underperformer in the energy transition, and the state that has the largest gap between where it's at now and its 2030 emissions reduction goals. So now New South Wales is, they're both around 30% renewable if you count rooftop solar, compared to Tasmania, which is 95% and used to be 100% before they had some reliability issues and have to import from Victoria. And South Australia, 75% down to 30% in New South Wales. New South Wales, as we all know, the biggest part of the NEM, and so New South Wales' problems becomes the country's problems. So with the establishment of the renewable energy zones, the REZs, this has been the focus of the state's energy transition. What that does is it places the new generation a long way from where it's needed. We're going out to central west of New South Wales, up to New England. Now, that's great, those places. It's easier to build a wind farm than it is in Campbelltown. But once you build things there, well, they're expensive to build in regional areas. You need to make temporary housing and all of this, which costs money. But it's expensive to then build the transmission to bring it back to the load. That means ultimately a more expensive energy transition than if we were able to build generation closer to load. So just moving to the kinds of new demand that we're having here, data centres are now the biggest source of load growth in Australia. Where they're very energy-intensive industries. They also happen to be water-intensive, because that, as electricity flows through computer chips, it turns into heat. That heat needs to be dissipated. That requires a water cooling system. So it's really just the last year that this has been flagged by our network planners and so forth as a big issue. I think data centres now are the third biggest industry in Australia in terms of electricity usage. They're expected to be bigger than the biggest industry in terms of electricity usage early next decade. And that's driven by the explosion in AI. I think a lot of what we do is now guided by various forms of AI. I think that's starting to transform most businesses. We're investing a lot at Zen Energy in trying to understand weather patterns and so forth through different types of AI analysis of the relationship between all this weather data we have and the things that we care about. In Australia, Sydney happens to be Australia's capital for data centres. And Western Sydney is the main data centre growth corridor in Sydney. Why? Because it's got infrastructure, it's got grid capacity that's coming online. So the challenge then is in a place like Western Sydney that's growing fast, just in terms of population and normal forms of load, it's also the area that's effectively going to be attracting the equivalent of a couple of aluminium smelters in data centres over the next decade. How does it meet that additional industrial demand beyond what's required to serve households and ordinary usage? I guess the theme of what we're pursuing in our development program is to look for opportunities to build generation close to where it's needed, very close to the network nodes, to the major substations and so forth. So we're here today in Endeavour's service area. Why are we doing that? It's because if we have a project that's built close to a substation, it comes with much lower transmission risk, lower connection costs for us, and it translates to us being able to serve our customers at a lower cost. Now, a contrast to building a project close to a load centre would be something like Snowy 2.0, which is a great idea. It's located quite a long way from Sydney. It's located in relatively hostile terrain for a construction project. That means costs. That means delays. But once it's built, there's a massive transmission augmentations that are required to bring that electricity back into Sydney, where it's ultimately needed. I'll talk a little bit about our project here shortly. So 25 kilometres due west of here, we're developing a pumped hydro storage site. It's called the Western Sydney Pumped Hydro Project. It's planned for it to deliver 1 gigawatt of power, and it can work in reverse, so it can soak up 1 gigawatt of rooftop solar, put back 1 gigawatt of energy into the system in the early evening. It's designed to run for over 8 hours, so it can power over 500,000 homes through the night. It's an asset built to last. Most of the hydro projects in Tasmania are still running well, 100 years on. So this project will have a design life of 70 years. And pumped hydro, is a particularly attractive source of energy for the grid. It provides inertia. It has big spinning systems that can provide a lot of grid support services, which a gas peak or a battery is unable to provide. So the particular sort of attraction of this for us is we happened to find a site that was heavily disturbed land, located next to the grid, and we're basically building a slightly smaller Snowy 2.0, but nestled in amongst all the infrastructure that's needed to service that. So we're working with the old coal washery rehabilitation company that's been moving dirt around a site that's washed coal for the last 120 years, and they come with expertise in how to work with all the local contractors and so forth. They know that sort of geology very well. We're also, rather than Snowy being about 600 kilometres from the load centre, this is 25 kilometres from the load centre. And the result of that, if the project goes to plan, is its unit cost becomes about 1/3 of what the unit cost of Snowy 2.0 is. We're working closely with local partners who, like us, are focused on supporting the prosperity of New South Wales, and in particular meeting the needs of South West and the Greater West. Our first partnership in this area is with SSROC, the Southern Sydney Regional Organisations of Councils, who we are working with to supply renewable energy to the street lights we see around us at night. To the swimming pool over here is powered by 100% renewable energy through a contract with Zen Energy, and we thank Wallandilly and Campbelltown Council for their support, who are both here today. So this collaboration that we seek in developing our business is with forward-thinking, sustainability-driven organisations that are set up to serve their community, and that's really what we see as part of the secret sauce required for Australia to seize its natural place in the world stage as a renewable energy superpower. So Zen Energy is pursuing storage projects at all scale, from sort of very large pumped hydro project down to mid-scale batteries, 100, 200 megawatt batteries. We're also working at the scale of community batteries. These are smaller batteries that might go in a football stadium or in a council building. We're working with the Campbelltown Council to roll out community batteries in this area. So there's in this energy space, there's a lot of talk about what are the best technologies for the energy transition. There's a lot of talk about gas. There's more recently talk about the nuclear option. I don't want to go into too much of that today, but just to give an example of why we're not supporting gas, we're not supporting nuclear, aside from any ideological preferences or sustainability preferences. If you build a gas plant out at Narrabri, you're 1,500 kilometres, 1,000 kilometres from the load centre. You need to build more pipelines to bring all of that gas back here. In contrast, if you build storage projects, you can build that close to the load. And effectively what we can do with storage projects is one part of the energy transition that's going really well is rooftop solar. What we're starting to see now in South Australia and Queensland is the network operator is turning off people's rooftop solar systems because there's too much energy coming into the grid. So the one part of the energy transition that's going really well is being dialed down. Now, that's not the best thing that we could do. An alternative is to build storage close to loads to be able to soak up all of that excess energy during the day. So how we see part of the electricity supply solution for Western Sydney is you just keep encouraging an acceleration of the build out of rooftop solar, but then build all the storage close to the load so that we can soak up that power in the day and give it back to households when people come home in the evening and turn on their air conditioning. So it's a very simple loop with this pumped hydro project, for example. For it to charge, we just need 500,000 rooftops across Western Sydney running their normal solar system. We can soak that up in the middle 4 hours of the day when the grid doesn't have much power demand, and we just put that back usually to poorer households that don't have rooftop or batteries in their house in the early evening, and it becomes a very efficient way to start to deliver the electricity transmission without having to plan how to build a major infrastructure project through the Snowy National Park. So the challenge and the opportunity for us is how we meet peak electricity demand. This happens mainly in the evenings. It happens around sort of 5 p.m. and it gets a little bit later each year as rooftop solar increases. That requires a lot of peaking power of one form, and again we see the storage as the cheapest way to deliver this peaking power. Just a simple reality in the grid is that if you compare the eastern suburbs of Sydney and the western suburbs from power demand, the flex on a hot summer day, if Eastern Sydney flexes by 50%, Western Sydney's electricity demand flexes by 100%. It has double the flex of Western Sydney. Why is that? Because it's 6 to 10 degrees hotter, something that's been touched upon earlier in the day. And also because houses aren't as good. And so people don't have large homes with stone floors that stay relatively consistent through the day. They have poorly insulated houses which and meet that need when they come home by whacking on their air conditioning and blasting that out at sort of 5 to 8 p.m. And so I think this is something what we certainly advocate for to meet that's a reality. There is a simple fix for it, which is making air conditioning cheap and sustainable for everyone. But then, to do that well, we could triple the size of our transmission grid, or we could increase our transmission grid by a much more moderate amount and put these, well-selected generators and storage devices through that area. Delivering for Southwest Sydney requires to do it well requires a lot of cooperation. We need to do a lot of listening and understanding of how people are able to shape their own lives and experiences. It needs a lot of bottom-up, community-driven approach to planning with genuine participation and partnerships, a lot of co-design and informed consent with traditional owners so that we deliver the infrastructure that people actually want and will therefore get community support because this is the infrastructure that allows people's lives to prosper. So in recent months, we've heard the Prime Minister, we've heard the New South Wales Treasurer speak pointedly about making decisions in the interests of Western Sydney that don't repeat mistakes of the past. I think this is why we're here today, to understand more clearly what those mistakes are. And I think the tale of two two cities that we started with this morning is the theme that we're trying to avoid. There's if you're looking at the expansion of electricity demand, we're going to see the great majority of that happening here in Western Sydney. I think we need to start understanding as an integrated problem what the electricity problem is in Western Sydney. What is the efficient way to do that? I think this follows. We're talking in these ways. I think we're more familiar to talking about efficient roads, efficient rail. The electricity industry is maybe a more complex one with lots of different parts, which makes it more rare to have a sensible conversation where people talk about how these many different parts of rooftop solar, local storage, grid-scale storage, transmission, other forms of generators come together efficiently. But that's really the conversation that we want to lean into over the next 5 years. How does our plans integrate with the plans of households, of councils, of businesses, of data centre operators, and if we of transmission operators such as Endeavour. If we have if we run this conversation well, we'll deliver the energy transition in half the speed of time and probably at about a third of the cost of what it would be if we don't run those conversations well. So thank you, and look forward to the conversation at the forum shortly.